I'm out of breath for some reason.
Oh.
Yeah, they're poisoning me with the anti-COVID stuff.
No.
Are you sure you know what it is that you're drinking there?
It's MK Ultra. That's the brand of water that I drink.
I actually wonder if someone were to put out on the market a water that was named MK Ultra, what would people do?
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Oh, that'd be neat. I mean, there'd be a pocket of people who would excitedly go buy it, just for the edginess of it.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunkduck QUACKCAST. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tanzarine.
Hello.
Our good friend Stu Pedasso. No, Mr. Baines, and no Pitface because she is deemed to be an information risk. So we're going to be talking about information. What's that, Tans?
She has been eliminated until further notice.
Yeah, she's gone to the re-education camp. She's not deemed to be in on our super secret information that all you listeners are privileged for you because we are the Illuminati. So, to wit, in this particular QUACKCAST, 561, we're talking about manipulation, echo chambers, and online conspiracy in the modern world. And so how all these things kind of factor into each other. All right, so this is a very interesting conversation. It has to do about the online world and the big tech companies that we all use in order to facilitate our online communication. We're not going to be, kind of presenting you with a conspiracy and hoping you'll buy into it. We're just going to talk about the tendency of the way the internet is organized now, and the tendency that has to encourage us towards conspiracy thinking. So before we get into that, I have to bring up the featured comic. So the featured comic for this week, what the hell did I feature? I'll have to find it in my notes because my notes are full of all this other bloody stuff. No. Oh my goodness. So the featured comic this week was Pep Squad. So I'm going to talk about Pep Squad now. So have a little pep in your step and go towards the squad. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Pep Squad. Pep Squad is a classic gag strip that follows the adventures of a small group of attractive high school cheerleaders as they fumble their way through cheers, score points over one another, and try and survive the rigors of high school. They're attractive, dressed as cheerleaders, and they're funny, so it's a great combo. This is a funny, light, slice-of-life gag-a-day comic in a classic newspaper-style format. It's full colour with good-looking, stylized, cute, sexy art. Dave Meyer has been making this comic for over 10 years, though there aren't that many comic strips. He's shown great consistency of style and tone over that time. So there's a lot of good stuff to enjoy, but you won't be overwhelmed by the amount that there is. So you could read through the entire thing and enjoy it. He sort of just takes off and does little arcs and things like that. I think the current one was a Halloween kind of arc with zombies and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, you can enjoy that. It's a really little clever, nice little comic. It's a bit small to look at, but that's typical for newspaper style gag strips. And I love his little characters and the way he's sort of designed them. They all look very, very cute and sexy and fun. So I hope you enjoy Pep Squad by Dave Meyer, and it's rated E for everybody. Read it. And that was our featured comic, Pep Squad. Put some pep in your peptides. I don't know. All right, so
Your squad. Put some squad in your step.
Yes, exactly. All right, so after you finish squatting, we have the featured music for this week. Gun Wallace has given us the theme to The Ham. I think the particular thing is called The Ham, which I believe is named after the creator of the comic, who The Ham is about. Very special music. So let me tell you about the Ham. It's a quiet country road. Golden sun rays barely caress the shadowed trees through the cold morning mist. An old truck bounces and jounces along on stiff suspension past brushing branches, roaring through the stillness. Beautifully evocative notes draw us in. Then the tune excites us with plucked banjo and burning, distorted electric guitar. Take it away, Gummels, with the theme to The Ham. And that was the theme to The Ham, which is a comic by Hans Richt, something like that. He's a fantastic artist. He's just, brilliant. You should definitely look at all his works. Cochlea and Eustacia. Is that the name of that comic, Baines?
Yeah.
It's freaking gorgeous. It's beautiful. Yeah, proud to have him on the dock. Drunkduck. So, Drunkduck is drunk on conspiracy at the moment. Not so much conspiracy, but the way the online world has become a it's made us more primed to believe in conspiracy or to take up conspiracies, unfortunately. So, what I'm going to be talking about today is it's the problem with the monopolies, really, of and narrowing down and gatekeeping of information. So I'll cover the four main points here. So we tend to get increasingly manipulated through our online interaction, and in that we tend to subscribe to various conspiracies. This becomes a problem, like anti-vaccine or COVID conspiracies, stuff like that. We're more primed to believe in this kind of stuff. So Tance sent me an excellent email about the traditional stuff that primes us towards conspiracies. So that it's an important thing to keep in mind that conspiracies have always been around. We're always encouraged to go for conspiracy thinking just because of the way our brains work. We like to make connections. We like to personify bad things that happen in the world. And when our social situation goes pretty shit, we tend to look for causes rather than look at the cause in ourselves, or the bigger problems with our government. We tend to graft towards, it must be this thing, the Nazis blamed everything on the Jews, that kind of stuff. We look for these kind of things. Anyway, we're not going to particularly be talking about that, but that makes a good background behind this. So, all right. The modern world of the online interaction predisposes us to manipulation. The way this is done is one of the particular things is AI personalization of user experience and interaction on social media sites. So what happens is we use Google, we use Facebook, we use Pinterest, we use Twitter, whatever kind of big media company you can name, Alibaba, Amazon, eBay, all these kind of things, PayPal. These big companies we use, there's only a certain amount, and there's actually really quite a small amount of these companies, and especially when you go to the kind of the big mother companies like Apple and Amazon and Microsoft, who a lot of companies use to run their services on. Everyone uses these Windows. The name Azure servers, Windows Azure servers. A lot of companies are running on them. A lot of companies are running on Amazon web systems, including the Drunkduck is using that for our images. We're using AWS, Amazon Web Services, for our all the artwork on Drunkduck. So these kind of big companies are able to use a lot of data mining, so they track all your online activity. So that's what you look at, what you buy from, the kind of things you spend money on, who you talk to, like how long you spend on Facebook, all this kind of stuff. So that is not in of itself sinister. This is just kind of like an impersonal, kind of generalized thing. Unfortunately, what happens is this information is used often to curate your web viewing experience. So on Facebook, you'll only see posts by people on, you've got your massive friend list of everyone you know, everyone you like. You've got the groups that you like to look at. What Facebook will tend to do is it will only show you posts by these people and posts from these groups that it thinks will get engagement. So it narrows down the information that you see. You think you're going to look at all of your friends' information. You don't. It only narrows it down. It shows you only certain ads, certain news stories that it thinks that you want to see. Google does the same thing, although much worse, because Google is on your phone, is everywhere else. Like, we're using Google in for this to record our chat, for our communication here. So Google is everywhere. It's very embedded in everything. So Google will only show you certain search results that are personalized to you, and it will exclude a whole lot of other things based on various criteria. Google controls YouTube, so it'll only show you videos based on certain criteria and exclude a whole bunch of other ones. And this is based on things that it thinks that you want to see. It's based on things that it thinks will get more interaction from you. So things that it thinks will get more interaction from you tend to be things that will make you angrier or get more an emotional reaction from you. So what studies have proved is that, say if there's a neutral bot that joins Twitter, for example, what tends to happen is, via its first kind of interactions, if it just impersonally likes a couple of users, what Twitter will do is suggest other users to these accounts. And say if these users are it'll suggest other users based on what those users were. So if their leaning was a bit left-wing or a bit right-wing, it'll suggest you more of those. And because you like those people who are a bit right-wing or a bit left-wing, it'll suggest you people who are even more of that. So even if you're a neutral person, these AI systems tend to radicalize you. They'll give you more right-wing people or more left-wing people to look at. So you'll never be totally neutral. You'll always be directed upon a certain path. And that's what YouTube and things like Google tends to do. It'll radicalize you along certain paths. Not deliberately. This isn't a deliberate plan. I've got to keep reiterating that this isn't like some sinister, evil kind of conspiracy thing. It's just the way these AI systems are set up in order to, you know, make you interact more and get more value from you as a user. That's just the way the internet is run, because it's run by certain big companies and they use a lot of AI, and that's what happens.
The sinister thing I would say exists is not like some kind of mustache twisting villain, you know, pulling the strings, but the sinister fact is that you are a product on this platform. So they are treating you as a product, and they are processing you. And when I say you, I mean all of us, as a product. And if you are not aware of that, then you will be more exploited than absolutely necessary. so there's that. I would like to just take 2 minutes for the small historic nutshell of the whole conspiracy theory thing, because what we are dealing with today is just an enhanced, perhaps, and more vivacious version of, you know, conspiracy theories. But it is sorry about that. It is certainly not a new thing, and it is certainly not something that is done without nefarious purposes behind the conspiracy theory that is being spread. And one of the best examples that I also sent to us in that email is, of course, flat earthers. And they are not a new thing. They are not ancient, but they are not new. They are around, you know, they came about the 19th century when certain people felt that if science debunked the Bible on the issue of whether the earth was round or not, then people would stop believing in the Bible and taking it literally, like word for word. And so the Flat Earther Society was born around sometime in the 1800s. I don't remember right now exactly when. And they developed the original Flat Earther theory that we still hear about today. And it came basically from an effort to preserve the quote-unquote integrity of the Bible, because there are some quotes in the Bible that apparently people, I don't know, they are in the concrete operation stage and they need to take absolutely concretely. And,
literalists.
You know, extreme literalists, because there is nowhere in the Bible that it says that the earth is flat or immobile or whatever, but there are, because a lot of parts of the Bible are, you know, poems or in a poetic way, or, you know, written by people that were not interested in the scientific elements of, you know, the celestial spheres, that, you know, there are some hymns that imply that the earth is flat or immobile or whatever. So,
and some hers as well. It's not just men.
Yes. For that, we have Flat Earth Society that spread very well without the internet. Of course, if his name, I think, was Botham, whatever he's pronounced, the guy that started it all, if he had the internet, he probably would have a bigger following eventually. So there's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the framework to keep in mind, that this is not a new thing.
Well, yeah, conspiracies always tend to arise, and they always will, even without the internet. But the issue here is that okay, so I've laid the groundwork for the way we are online communication primes us towards extremism, whatever our political views are. This is why when people get in online debates about things, they tend to get very angry. They tend to hold caricatured kind of positions of whatever they purport to believe in. Okay, so say I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Republican, or like I'm conservative, I'm liberal, and they just hold really kind of extreme versions of those positions. And like, say George Floyd, this guy who was like killed by the American police in this particular situation, you get people going like saying, oh yeah, we should, it's right for people to riot and destroy buildings and to destroy shops because this is a legitimate form of protest. So that's already some kind of taking the real protest and the real anger of this, and then making it more extreme. And then you have people on the other side like celebrating George Floyd's death and behaving as if it's a joke and laughing about it. So they're taking extreme positions when it's freaking nonsense. It's not something you should go for either of those points about. You should be looking at they should have just been looking at like sensible ways of doing policing and regulating police in order that disasters like that don't happen. There's no reason to go off in these like incredible extremes of operatic ridiculousness. But that's how online debates tend to take things, and it does have real world consequences. But anyway, so we've got this. What has been increasingly recorded to happen is that there is external manipulation. And this is one of the biggest kind of factors behind online conspiracies going crazy or going viral. So it doesn't create, this isn't responsible for creating conspiracies, but it is responsible for spreading them online, and the reason why certain conspiracies get spread more than others. So what researchers have discovered is that, okay, there's bots and social media bots are incredibly cheap and incredibly easy to set up. And these aren't, people tend to focus more on like the state players, the bad state players. So Russia or China manipulating a lot of people. So yeah, the idea is like Russia or China like were manipulating the 2016 election with Donald Trump, and they were the reason Donald Trump got elected and the reason why Hillary Clinton didn't. So, which of course is not true. They did play a factor, and they were definitely part of this, but this was this kind of manipulation in its infancy in a lot of ways. So there were social media bots controlled by the Russian government, and they were kind of spreading misinformation, but they weren't just doing it for Donald Trump, they were doing it for Hillary Clinton as well. So their purpose wasn't to get Donald Trump elected, their purpose was to spread a social unrest and create a kind of partisan kind of what's the term when you have that kind of partisan split? It's like extreme partisanship,
tribalism or partisan.
So that's more what they're encouraging. So unfortunately, people sort of ran with it was all the Russian bots' fault. Trump got elected just because of those, and that kind of discredited the idea that there were bots and that this kind of manipulation does happen, which is totally stupid.
I mean, they leaned hard into Russia is the reason we lost Russian influence,
Of
and
course
the
they did.
American media ran with it for years.
Well, the reason of that is because what we're talking about before, with when you have what conspiracies do is it puts a face and it puts a person behind something that's happening, and that's what that is. They unfortunately turned a real thing into a conspiracy and made it a frickin' nonsense. So it has a seed of truth in it, like a lot of conspiracies do, but they turned it into something that was, stupid.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't they also blame Russian bots for Trump also losing the elections later, like in the second term?
I haven't really heard. I'd be interested to see. Yeah, I mean, they
think,
have their version with the idea of fake news and the election was rigged and that kind of thing.
And I think Venezuela doing something to the machines, the election machines.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
That's right.
Oh, that was a freaking nonsense.
They had a bit more of a mishmash. Like the Russiagate thing was a lot more unified. You don't see the Democrats so unified usually.
Well, I mean, everyone's prone.
I mean, see the truth or not, like they blew it way. I mean, whatever.
Everyone is prone to conspiracies. No, there's no vaccine against it, unfortunately. The right wing and the left wing can both go for them. And like I say, even if there is a grain of solid truth to these things, it doesn't stop people, turning it into a conspiracy. So, yeah, that was an example, like an early example of someone like manipulating this system with bots. What has actually happened furthering this, now we're a few years down the track, we've got there's been ISIS has used this in order to encourage radicalization of Muslim extremists. So this happens. This is like a known method of with the what's the thing that is something state? What do they call themselves? I can't remember. my mind's drawing a freaking blank here. Islamic State. That's it. So Islamic State, what they did was they used this method. Well, they use this method in order to radicalize people through online groups. So so I've got to go back a bit. So I've said we've got the way the internet already radicalizes us in certain ways. It gives us, the extreme kind of arguments and stuff. Then we've got the way that the internet curates stuff and creates kind of AI driven echo chambers by its gatekeeping. So then what these external forces can do is, with the social media bots, they all like particular news stories. So it raises the profile of these news stories or particular people in your social media feeds. So I don't know, some crazy guy, Alex Jones, for example, his profile will raise right up in your social media feeds and you'll see his things more than any others. And because he spouts off, just freaking ridiculous stuff, conspiracies and all this kind of shit, you'll see that more than any other. That will predispose you to other ridiculous kind of bits of shit that are related to that these people want to promote. So in terms of ISIS, they might raise a profile of some radical imam who says particularly crazy things. So you'll see him, and then you'll see stuff that's related to him, which is stuff that they promote, and then you'll slowly get funneled over to them in the end. And also what they'll tend to do is they'll have a whole lot of fake people as their social media bots. Not only will they be promoting these news stories, but they'll also actually have these fake people who will be spouting off particular slogans and
I'll try this and it works.
Yes,
or whatever the
precisely that. And they will be reposting links and things like this saying, oh, have you seen this news story? Have you seen that news story? You should check out this.
see it before they take it down.
Exactly, precisely that. So that's
I
an
love that.
example of if the Islamic State doing this. We have multi-level marketers who do this. So this is
They don't want me to reveal the secrets.
Yeah, the secrets of the meaning of life. And
the weight loss industry is going to shut me down unless you click now.
Oh yes, so
grab it while you can.
The two biggest kind of culprits of this are a guy called Mercola and Natural News. So these two companies are massive in the alternative health industry, and also, but basically marketing bullshit and earning like billions of dollars from pushing you towards this. And they do this kind of manipulation of, your feeds, using bot farms, and just pushing you towards this fake stuff.
Also, you mentioned that there is no vaccine for not being manipulated or radicalized on the internet and stuff. I would disagree on that. Saying that there is a vaccine, and the vaccine needs to actually train yourself to have proper discourse. And what I mean by this is that something that is very discouraged on social media, partly due to the nature of social media, which is like shooting off snippets of information.
Sound bites,
Yes, sound bites that are extremely highly concentrated in the message and have a very nuance and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, also because there is a tendency, a human tendency, to want to be correct when you say something in public. Mm. The issue is that we are de-educating ourselves from actually holding proper arguments and discussing and seeking not only to convince the other person necessarily, but to also find what the other person knows and enrich our own perspective with what the other person knows, so that we enhance and develop, if you like, our grasp on the world and our grasp on certain things. And this is highly discouraged on social media and elsewhere, unfortunately. So this whole idea of, if you disagree on even a little bit of what I'm saying, you are the enemy. This is a bigger problem that pushes people towards radicalization than anything else, in my opinion. And again, I may be wrong, but I'm willing to talk about it. So, but I don't think I'm wrong on this one. So.
Yeah, well, part of, I don't know if there's a vaccine, but there's, I wouldn't say it's a vaccine because it's very hard to do this. It's more like a practice of washing your hands and hygiene more than anything else. It's like social media hygiene. You have to keep it up in order for it to work, because it can fail if you don't. And as part of my stuff, I actively donate money to Wikipedia, Snopes, and Skeptoid Media and the Web Archive as kind of things that are neutral fact-checking sources of information. So Wikipedia can be manipulated, but it is a fantastic resource, and it's something that everybody can use, and it's not directed for right or left. The Skeptoid Media, that's run by Brian Dunning. He investigates all sorts of conspiracies and presents his findings and updates them when things are wrong. So he's a fantastic follow. Snopes, again, they investigate a lot of stuff. They're a fantastic resource. The Web Archive is there to preserve information. So when people try and secretly delete stuff from the internet and hide it, the Web Archive is a fantastically useful resource to go and find out all the stuff that these sneaky politicians wanted to take off the internet and pretend they didn't say. So that's part of my social media hygiene. And there's also like knowing that the potential for information to be compromised and the potential for things to be wrong. When something sounds too crazy or too evil or too silly to be true, then it's a very good idea to go and look for sources, and good sources, to see if it really is. And sometimes it is true, but often it isn't. If it sounds weird, then don't just parrot it because someone else said it. And if you see a lot of news sources that say the same story, then that is a good sign that it's probably bullshit, because then they're just copying and pasting the same thing over and over and over. You can only tell if people like mention names and dates, and then you can go and triple check and actually see about those names and dates. You can take it all the way to the beginning. If you do that, then it's probably true. Or if there's a lot of other facts, like there's this story about this priest having sex on an altar in a Catholic priest in New Orleans with two prostitutes, and he was like
oh yeah, I heard about that. Maybe you mentioned it before.
I don't know, but it's a pretty popular news story, and he was meant to be enacting some kind of satanic ritual, and it was meant to be like this thing that was getting him off. He was taping on his mobile phone, and that sounds freaking ridiculous. There's a photo of this guy with a smiling face, looks like he's drunk, in a priest gear. That looks like a photo from some frat party that they've just connected to the story. There's pictures of the prostitutes. Again, they look like things that people have just concocted. So you can actually investigate this story, and it is true. And they do have names and dates, and they like have records of when this guy, received his whatever it was, his church and all this kind of stuff. So that's an example of a story that sounds really silly, but you investigate it and actually find it is true, and those photos are all real. So
what's interesting about that is, like, you mentioned this story, and I remember hearing about it and even looking into it a little bit, but I had no memory of whether it was true or not. So there you go.
The thing in general is that giving yourself wholeheartedly to any kind of second-hand news, and unfortunately in this day and age, pretty much everything is second-hand news, unless you are, an eyewitness, is a dangerous game. That's what I would say. You would need to at least corroborate it with people that are trustworthy, or sources that are trustworthy. For example, over here in Greece, we have a massive issue of press freedom, and that means that there is a lot of fake news being channeled through official sources. And this is not just a conspiracy theory. This is unfortunately even documented fact, by the EU. Which again is not the most trustworthy source necessarily, but in any case, I mean, it's something that has been corroborated in many ways. Yeah. And the thing is that when you live in a situation where you cannot, in all honesty, trust pretty much anyone, you have to determine certain formulas to get a grip on objectivity. And I'm not even saying a grip on reality, just objectivity. Things that at least have happened. So having a grip on objectivity means doing your best to corroborate whether what you have read or what you have heard is correct. And when you have done that, still keep a small grain of salt that maybe some other piece of information evades you that may change the picture or may completely shift what you know into some kind of different context, so on and so forth. And this is a very stressful thing to keep doing. It is easy to find like a couple of sources that you trust and just
always
blindly
stick to them.
Yes, and that I would advise to never do that, even if it comes from CNN. It's not necessarily always true. I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm saying that, you know, take it seriously, but also try to double check wherever you can.
Yeah,
And,
that's a good point. So,
yeah.
like, I stick to, like, the BBC is a government-funded news agency, but they don't tend to parrot what the British government says. They tend to be more objective, and they tend to be one of the slightly better ones. But, like Tant says, don't trust them as a news source completely, because there are biases there, and they definitely do make mistakes. I remember during the Iraq War, when I expected them to be neutral, they were saying, "Oh, there have been, you know, more attacks on our forces." They would characterize it as our forces rather than saying coalition forces. They would say, and the Iraqis have done this and they've done that, speaking like us and them, instead of having a more objective reporting. And in terms of that, Al Jazeera was a far better reporter because they didn't take sides. But there will always be that kind of aspect. There will always be biases in anything. I mean, Snopes, I bring up them as being an excellent fact checker, and they're, you know, unfairly demonized by the right, unfortunately. But they are great. But they still make mistakes. You know, the information can't be 100% totally correct, and they're not geniuses that they will be able to find, you know, everything there. They're more likely to be correct, but they can make errors.
Yeah, I mean, keep probabilities in mind. And I just want to give an example from my country, which unfortunately, as I said, is very, very low on freedom of the press and going lower every day. I mean, we break a record every day here over here. But anyway, for example, we have a huge issue with ICU coverage and ICU intensive care units, you know, with the whole COVID situation. So the main news sources, including the official news source, which would be like something like the equivalent of the BBC, I would say, reported officially that there are no people being intubated outside of the ICU, you know, for COVID. Which, of course, when you get intubated outside of the ICU, your mortality rate, unfortunately, is higher than if you are within the ICU, for obvious reasons. Out came all the coalitions of doctors from all over the country, officially, with names and signatures and official protests to the government, saying that right now, as we speak, we have this number of people outside of the ICUs being intubated, this many people having waited in line for the ICUs for these many days, and so on and so forth, for about 3 days, that they were being ignored by the media, until the outrage on social media was so much, and their documentation, which was officially filed, in the justice system, among other things, was so spread and so viral that finally it broke into the official news sources, and then they mentioned that, oh, by the way, there are some people outside of the ICU, you know, being intubated, but that's okay. They go in very quickly, and then we had also the Prime Minister officially say that it doesn't matter where you are intubated, outside or inside the ICU, you will die anyway, and this is a direct quote. But you shouldn't take me at my word. You should double check what I said, and you can. So what I'm what I'm saying is that if I were to trust as a person in Greece only the official news sources, I would never know the reality in hospitals right now. Okay, sorry, the wind was so...
God, how scary.
Oh my God. Oh my God, where am I? That's the government trying to shut me down, clearly. Oh my God. Okay, we have very turbulent winds. And
What did you say?
we just blew open the window.
Turbulent winds.
Oh my God, wow.
And it smashed into me. And, carry on talking while I try to pick up the pieces here. So,
okay.
Please carry on.
My goodness me, it was like
Wow.
Tance was giving us this information about the unreliability of government news sources, and suddenly, smash, her computer flies off the table, and it sounded like she was being attacked.
The man in black was standing beside her desk, and he just flipped over her computer.
How's that about the conspiracy theory? If I said, like, oh my God, I see, the special ops guys outside my window, you would believe me.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just like the computer went over with this loud clatter, and then you stayed live for 10 seconds, and then it just went dead. We've been talking about that for years.
We'd have to make up new conspiracies in order to account for it.
I have to say,
our brains work that way, right? Like we will make up stuff with very little to go on.
Our brains like to make connections, and
we like to. Yeah, it's natural.
Because that's how thinking works. I mean, a lot of what we do, we don't have like specific narrative kind of like reasons for doing it. We sort of make up the reasons afterwards, if that makes sense. So the way dreams work, for example, so dreams, we think, oh, there's a fantastic story that I have in my dream. I did this, and then I did that, and then I flew, and then I rode on the back of a dragon, and all this. But that's what really happens with dreams is your subconscious just throws up a bunch of images, and then your other brain functions make a story out of those images. They make a narrative reason for why you're seeing them. So they say, oh, and then I did this, and then I did that. So yeah, that's how our brains work. We create connections, pretty much, and it's very hard to sort of keep talking because I'm looking at the destruction that the wind wrought within Tanta's room, and it splattered. Yeah. It's covered her with wine.
Oh no!
It looks like she's had her stomach shot, and there's a wine glass smashed everywhere.
Oh
she's covered in red.
That nice sweater you're wearing.
It's incredible.
All wined.
So the wind, the nature.
I see that dude dressed up like Jack Ruby standing in the doorway too. That's creepy.
Exactly. Nature has got together to be part of this thing. Jack Frost has come in
and Jack Ruby.
Yeah, and Jack Ruby together, and gone together to silence Tans. Yeah, so that's how
right.
That's how these conspiracy things work.
You're right about
stories.
Dreams, though, and hauntings as well. Like people will have an alleged haunting or believed haunting, and their brains will create a whole story or an identity for a ghost. Like, oh, this looks like a face, that looks like a person, that feels like, my dead neighbor or something like that. And
yes, exactly.
None of it to say dreams aren't telling us some kind of story, and none of it to say there's not some kind of spiritual realm that is perceived sometimes. Like, not saying either way, but just that our brains, it doesn't matter because our brains will create a story out of very little.
Exactly. We'll create all sorts of things, and it's very hard to actually do the work and actually find out the truth behind a lot of these things. So it's easier to go towards the fake one. It's like the conspiracy of aliens in Area 51. So that all started with it's the aliens on this particular night were landed, and then they had the bodies down there, and Area 51's where the aliens live, and that just became pop culture. Whereas in reality, Area 51, well, the area that we know as Area 51, has always been a testing area by the American military. The story spread by them to explain it was that it was weather balloons. So yeah, it was weather balloons. It was a mistake, and people sort of fell for that, the fact that they were weather balloons, and then they developed the alien thing. And that wasn't a true story either. That was the cover story spread by the government.
There you go. I mean, yet again, there's a massive, maybe the greatest example of actual lies. Yeah. You get more mistrust.
So
you get more maybe false beliefs. We've got UFOs showing up again now these days. I don't know what's going on there, but
so yeah, the real story was a couple of things. So they had initially high atmosphere radio like interceptor devices on balloons, and so that's what initially the whole stuff was, and they didn't want that discovered because that was secret from Russians. This was right in the middle of the Cold War, and if you can get a bit of information ahead, if you could use like these balloons in order to get your receivers up there to get Russian transmissions from the ionosphere, I think it was, being reflected off the atmosphere, and they don't know, you want to keep that under wraps. You don't want anyone to know that you can listen in on that. So that was partly behind it. Then, of course, there was Operation Oxcart, which we know from now as being the A-12, which became the SR-71, the Blackbird, which was the high-speed spy plane that was used, was top secret. It was developed in the late 50s and, flown in the 1960s and the 1970s. And this was super high top secret, but it became common knowledge in the 70s and the 80s. But that was super
Paul McCartney tried to warn us about it, I remember, in that song. He knew.
Which song?
After he died and was cloned, the clone had that Blackbird information.
Of course. And then Lynyrd Skynyrd with Freebird.
Singing in the Dead of Night? Yeah, we get it, Paul. We know it.
Oh, jeez, Blackbird sings in the dead of night. Very clever, Baines. See, Baines is the cipher. He's the guy who knows all this stuff.
I will say that I have appreciated in the past, I definitely 2016 was I was watching American news, and what happened in 2016 with Trump and Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders and everything, and what I saw going on versus what kind of major media outlets were reporting. That was a massive eye opener for me, and I appreciated the YouTubers and stuff who were giving an alternative view that seemed more accurate than what you'd hear on cable news, even cable comedy. It's like it suddenly seemed like there's two narratives happening, and one of them makes way less sense.
Yeah, it's very. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, so that was huge for me, and I will say that I've been saddened by. There's another wrinkle to this whole process that YouTubers, who I have a lot of respect for, people who who tried and who still try to do stuff there. You see them, if you're watching closely enough, you can see them. Some of them realize, we make more money being more divisive.
Yes, unfortunately.
And then suddenly you get destructive. And you can feel it if you're sort of locked in. And I mean, luckily I'm older, and I think that helps. I don't know, a younger person, maybe BS detectors are good in younger people too, like as they get used to stuff. But yeah, you see them get co-opted just by their own kind of profit motive and stuff.
Yeah, very much so. Controversy gets more clicks. Just being sensible doesn't excite people as much. So that's a good point. And it's a good point about this whole citizen journalism stuff. That's what made Twitter so important in the early days. And even though it's it was co-opted by influencers and people with the blue ticks and stuff like that, and the big celebrities. And
and now Twitter, very recently, did we talk about this on the air? Like, they're now shutting down, blatantly and brazenly shutting down independent journalism that goes against certain interests, So it's scary, man. It's like it's such a web of deceit, and it helps people fall into, just regular people, just fall into conspiracy thinking.
It does, and
go off the rail.
The main problem is both the AI curation of our information and the narrowing down of our sources of information online. I've often bemoaned the fact that Drunkduck is one of the reasons we've got a lot less kind of people using our site now, is because of the enormous power that more wealthy sites have to drive traffic towards their site. But mainly it's Google. So a lot of our traffic used to come from Google, but because we've been demoted over the years because we haven't been able to afford HTTPS when we needed it. We did eventually get it, but there's other things like a site that looks good on our phones, like a mobile site or an adaptive site. So we haven't got the money to do that. Sites that have been able to do that, and that increases their rankings on Google. They're able to afford the SEO. So Google curates information, and that means a lot of businesses and websites and stuff like that fall by the wayside, and others go up higher because Google absolutely limits things. Not just because we all can't afford SEO and advertising. It's because of all these other factors that it just lays onto us. Like I was saying, the HTTPS, the web friendly site, not web friendly, like mobile friendly sites, all this kind of stuff, which creates a kind of a stratification of like the more wealthy things go up, the poorer things go down. So this is something that Tant said before we had the QUACKCAST, the way that society becomes stratified, which creates inbuilt inequalities, which again is the breeding ground for a lot of other problems and issues.
Maybe we should be more. We should get in on this divisiveness train in some way, but I'd want to switch back and forth. So I don't know if the audience would fall for that for very long.
Well, we could, if we could pool our money, start paying a lot of bots, creating bots, getting those set up, a bot farm, and that would drive traffic towards our site, and that would increase our profile. And then we would encourage the more divisive webcomics to be the more promoted ones on our site. So I'd do features of the divisive ones. We'd set up programming which would favor more divisive and more emotionally driven webcomics to feature on the front page and to be in the top 10 list and to come up in Quail's Random, all that kind of stuff. They would be more promoted on members' feeds when they looked at our site. And that would create more engagement. So that would be that would be a method that would work in order to increase our profile. So this is an excellent example of putting that kind of manipulation into practice. So who knows that Webtoon doesn't already do that?
Well, I was going to say that they already do that.
There you go.
In the sense that, you can see how platforms curate their content in their landing pages, because they take, for example, tapas, and this is not meant as a slide. It is what they want to present and how they want their brand to come across to audiences. So that is totally legit. However, the fact does remain that what they promote 99% of the time is a very specific type of webcomic with specific type of content and specific type of art style. So that would be a good example, because that creates engagement with audiences that are looking for this specific thing. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's pretty much obvious. Now, if they have a nefarious purpose of imbuing people with whatever it is that the main comics are, the themes of the main comics, which I don't know what they. I have never read the front page comics, so I don't really know. You could totally spin a conspiracy theory about pretty much everything, even the wind that opened the window and smashed my desktop and totally ruined my shirt and sweater.
Oh man!
Yeah, it was on purpose. It was done on purpose.
It was a government ghost, Chance.
It was not the government ghost. It was the government's secret weapon controlling the weather.
Yes.
To shut it up.
Exactly.
It was the white supremacists working in league with the SJWs. Yeah, I can't pick an enemy. I want
them all.
Yeah.
It was all the extreme. Oh my God! How is it possible? I have changed my sweater.
It was cancel culture, and it was.
I changed my sweater, and I see wine on it.
Oh no!
How is it possible?
It's coming
How is
through.
it possible? It is. The wine is in on it, guys.
The telltale wine.
The telltale wine. There's actually no wine there. That's the damn spot.
Damn wine.
Damn spot. That's right.
So yeah, you can spin a conspiracy theory. The point is, and when is it a conspiracy theory? When there is no enough, I'm not going to say evidence, but at least indication that there is a dynamic that leads to this particular theory. That's, in my opinion, when it becomes a conspiracy theory. Ακούγεσαι?
Yeah, when you don't have enough information, you fill in the blanks.
You need a healthy skepticism. Like, you need a BS detector, whether you're watching something online or whether you're watching something on TV.
Yeah.
Whether you're watching Fox or CNN or whatever, or if you're watching a YouTuber, reading a blog, like.
But unfortunately, due to the way, we discussed about, the way AI kind of drives you towards a particular kind of thinking and narrows down your sources of what you're looking at, it's often very hard to use your BS detector, because the things you're using your BS detector on are, all your information is compromised, and you're already in a compromised state of thinking. Which is
that's a whole different. I'm not really on Facebook or Twitter, and I'm not reading like news feeds like that. But I'm still being guided, I'm sure, online, on Google, on YouTube. Like, the stuff that's popping up is
definitely YouTube.
Of course,
is massive. But the other thing is that this stuff isn't just online. These people are influenced by this. The QAnon people, the morons who did the invasion of the Capitol. So all that was, that's online manipulation. That was purely online manipulation, and that had real world effects. And that was kind of a situation that was seen all around the world.
Actual dissatisfaction. Oh, sorry, Ozzy. Go ahead.
Yeah, like they're feeding on there's actual dissatisfaction, but that was. Like, the mechanics of that were totally constructed online, and then this had ramifications all over the world. Well, so we all saw how ridiculous this was, and how evil and how stupid. And in the States, it's an extremely important thing, because people just don't invade the Capitol building. That was just completely unheard of. So yeah, it's
and we could say, and that is another thing. People, and this is a natural mechanism of our brains. We like to categorize things and neatly. Sorry, I'm looking at the window. And neatly categorize things under labels, file them away, not really look into them afterwards, and just treat them in the same way that we have ascribed for the particular label in which we have categorized things. It's shorthand so that we can move on with our lives quickly. The problem with this is that, for example, the attack on the Capitol, this has been filed under QAnon people, crazy people, people that believe in conspiracy theories, people that are generally dangerous, extremist, crazies. At least this is one label. Okay. So when this particular attack on a very iconic building of governance, okay, has been filed under this is done by so and so people. If you have in some other country, for example, or even in the United States as well, or whenever, a legitimate revolution of people actually going in to overtake the government because the government is totalitarian and it has been doing certain things, and this is a very legitimate movement of switching regimes, which has happened in history, and when the won is afterwards celebrated as national holidays. Okay, so if that happens, then people are going to tend to file this particular other event as crazies that are extremist and they are following some kind of cult leader Q or whatever other letter. So I'm not interested in looking into it any further to see why they are doing what they are doing. And this is a very dangerous thing. And I would posit as a theory to test that such things are being allowed in order to create the idea to people that when things like this happen, it is done by people that are illiterate extremists that will not wear a mask and not vaccinate, and they believe in microchips and baby blood in whatever. And this is this is a very serious thing.
Yeah.
This is a preemptive, communicative attack.
I tend to disagree. I wouldn't say this is like a deliberate plan, that because that's a classic kind of conspiracy thinking, in that it's a false flag in order to make us think that's what they want to think, because this stuff becomes recursive because you can keep on going deeper and deeper.
I'm not saying that they were not that. I'm saying that they will be used as an example to discredit anyone else.
Yeah, but they're not. Agreed. But it was not like they're not being let to do this in order to be used as an example. It's more like this stuff will happen anyway, and then we take advantage of it. That's what most of reality tends to be.
That's how I interpreted what Taz was. Yeah.
Either or.
That's how I feel too. Like, a lot of this stuff is not a sinister plan, because although I think people can be evil enough to do this kind of stuff, they're not really clever or long-term thinking enough to do it, generally speaking.
And the thing is,
this stuff for the short-term advantage will be taken of certain things, and
I think it's
used to their own.
I think it's a bit of everything.
Well, the thing is that when you try and manipulate people in order to do this kind of stuff, there's this huge factor of just randomness, and things tend to go wrong, and people just tend to go off the rails and do their own thing, and like unintended consequences. So that's why it's way easier to take advantage of the inevitable stupidity of real people rather than actually guide events in a way that you want, because things tend to go crazy very quickly. So yeah.
I want to give another example from my personal experience. During the memorandum days, of course, when the memorandum happened the way that it did, there were a lot of human rights and legal and constitutional issues with it. Very valid, with a very broad range of discourse over it. Okay. So people, of course, objected to having their livelihoods slashed and facing basically, famine due to the various measures that were being taken, the inequality of the measures being taken, and so on and so forth. I was part of this contrarian movement, if you like. When this became strong enough, along came this weird group that was very much, super anti-memorandum, and they professed that they had a leader, and I'm kidding you not. I can provide all the documentation you may want over it. They had this leader who... Περίμενε. Ακούγεσαι. My mom is corroborating. Okay. So...
who's Tance receiving orders from?
My mom. She's the secret leader. She confessed. So anyway, so this guy, this cult leader type guy, was supposedly a super rich guy that nobody had ever heard of before, who had an impossible amount of money, something like 600 million or billion euro or something like that. That supposedly was owed to him by the American government. You are allowed to laugh. And he also had... Why did the government owe to this guy all this amount of money? Because he had sold secret technology given to him directly by the god Apollo.
By the what?
By the god Apollo. The god
Apollo.
Oh, the god Apollo.
Wow.
God Apollo.
He was good with technology, I heard.
Yes, he was excellent. Somehow, I mean, why not Hephaestus? I don't know. Anyway, by the god Apollo, who gave him special spacecraft technology, which he sold to the US, and the US now owed him this huge amount of money, which he was going to use to pay off the Greek debt.
Wow.
Okay, so this guy actually created the freaking cult. The problem, what was the problem, and why am I narrating all of this? Because after he made headlines, anyone that was against the memorandum was consciously written off as a follower of this guy. Until my mother and I intervened and did certain things in the media that broke this connection. Yes, and at court, and broke this connection, and communicationally, let's say, this attempt fell through. However, it was a very real threat. This weird, it's not even a conspiracy theory. I mean, he literally met Apollo. Okay. So yeah, he's in jail now.
Oh goodness me. Well, yeah, that often tends to happen. Like we're saying with the whole people discrediting the idea of Russian bots or Russian interference. It's because
it was a godly interference for us, like Apollo interference.
Yeah, and that's a danger of making connections. That's a debate term. It's called poisoning the well. So this
Exactly.
bit of
Thank
information,
you.
yeah, has been compromised, and then so all bits of information connected to it must be similarly compromised, and it must be totally bullshit, and there must be no. It's like the idea that no conspiracy theories are ever, real. Like, yeah, they are, but it's few, and you've really got to investigate it really super freaking hard. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Nothing is easy in this life.
Yeah.
So you get no easy answers. You get no easy dismissals either. But you have to put in the work. That's basically, it comes down to that. You cannot just sit back in your chair, read some headlines, and feel that you are informed and you know what's what. That's the biggest thing that anyone should take from this.
Exactly. This is
quite easy to forget. So many things that we see a headline and feel that, oh, I know that. You have these biases that you don't even realize consciously.
And this is what this QUACKCAST is really trying to get at, the fact that your whole online presence is being tracked and examined, and the things that you look at on your lovely Facebook, lovely Twitter feed, YouTube videos, it's all curated to present to you a particular skewed kind of version of the world, and it's not always done in a deliberate kind of way. It's just the way it is
done to keep you there, to keep you on the platform.
Yeah, it's because you're a product, and it's an impersonal thing mostly. It's not trying to make you more right wing or trying to make you more left wing or a social justice warrior or a conservative. It's just trying to make you what it thinks is the ultimate version of you in this stupid simplified AI thing. Yeah, simplified AI view of the world, which is always very, very, very silly and skewed. But there are groups that take advantage of this, and they're the ones you've got to watch out. And it's not all big government trying to take advantage. It's all stupid little stupid idiot groups with their own particular agendas, because it doesn't cost very much money to create these social bot farms. Anybody can do it.
Very lucrative, though.
Yeah, it can be extremely lucrative. It's okay, another example before we wrap it up. All those stupid clickbait websites you see at the bottom of news stories. You won't believe what this celebrity has done. You won't believe how this celebrity looks like now, or this celebrity from the 1990s, or this health product. All those kind of news stories you see, and it's run by sites like Outbrain and Tabula something or other. They tend to be on the sidebar or below or whatever. All news stories, doesn't matter what website, it could be it's on the BBC. Those kind of things tend to be auto-generated by these social bot farms. So, I
mean, the thing with bots, I'm sorry to cut you off for just a second, is they're going to get better and more sophisticated. But even I, as a moron, I can tell when it's fake. You see, it just feels fake.
But
you can develop a sense for it.
You can, but
this celebrity's net worth left his family in tears.
Yes.
And you see that headline for 10 different celebrities over the course of a few weeks of internet.
So many people fall for these. They click on it, and then
they'll
see. And then what typically you'll see is 50 different pages you have to click through. Oh, one. Then we have to click through to the next one before you get to the information that was actually mentioned in that little headline on that link. You have to go through 50, and often that story doesn't even appear in any of them. So these are auto-generated news stories and auto-generated headlines based on what the majority of people think is interesting or tailored towards you. So it's that's something that's an example of this kind of bot-driven stuff that just makes money, because the purpose of those things is to make money through ads. And it certainly does by, just bots driving your behavior. So,
and also posting messages saying that you do not allow Facebook to use your data does not do anything.
No,
You have already agreed to your data being processed.
Are people still doing that?
Yes.
Posting messages?
I see it like every other day. Every other day I see it still. So.
Open letter to Google. Don't track me.
Yeah, I mean, there are some kind of tools to fight against it. The European Union has introduced this thing where you can get your online presence deleted from various websites. That's not very effective, but you know, it's like it's a drop in a bucket. The other thing is using the incognito mode on your browser, which stops a lot of tracking. Doesn't stop all of it, but it stops a bit. That's a useful thing, especially if you don't want a search on Google to color all your future searches. That is effective there. It's also good on YouTube in order to, like, if you want to search for a particular thing, but you don't want to see a million videos about that in future, which tends to happen, and we all know about that. You use incognito mode, and then it will not show you a billion videos on the Spice Girls just because you looked up one Spice Girls song. So that's useful. VPNs can be useful in order to stop certain kinds of tracking. So, but generally,
we're sponsoring all kinds of podcasts. We should hold out on that recommendation. Get some money.
Yes.
DuckDuckGo, Tense just mentioned in the chat. Yeah, they apparently are a private chat. But if you try to watch a YouTube video, you'll get a warning that says, well, they can track you now if you link over to YouTube or whatever. But DuckDuckGo in general apparently does not track you.
You heard it first. In future, the Drunkduck, the Duck webcomics will have a partnership with DuckDuckGo. All the ducks will be in a row. Oh, God, it's a conspiracy of ducks.
Mighty ducks together.
It's the quackening.
The quackening.
Wow.
That's jeez. The quackening. All right, well, we should wrap it up because we don't want to keep this forever, and I have to get to bed.
Great topic, man. Fascinating.
And we all know that after a while, like after a specific amount of minutes, you get immediately flagged to the NSA. So we should wrap it up.
Oh, yes, they're tracking us. They're homing and they're back tracing us.
I back traced it.
Exactly what I was referencing. Okay. Bye-bye, people.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.